So welcome to the second episode of the second season of the Critical Interference podcast that we do here at CEMUS, the Center for Environment and Development Studies, a joint center at Uppsala University and the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. And I'm not going to do the long introduction that we've done before, but a basic disclaimer. The views here in this program is not representative of Uppsala University, CEMUS, or SLU in any way. It's our own personal take on these issues. But with that said, you should also feel free to express your views and be critical and personal if you want to in this conversation. So let's get into this. I have 4 people now in the podcast. This might completely break down, but hopefully we'll get through an hour of this in a conversation. So all of you have worked as course coordinators or are currently working as course coordinator at CEMUS, but you have different paths that lead you in or out of the work here at CEMUS. So Sachiko, Ishihara, you worked as a course coordinator mainly at the Global Challenges and Sustainable Futures course at CEMUS a couple of years back, but you also worked with outreach activities with me and the CEMUS 25th anniversary, and now it's 30 years this year, so it's been a long time. And now you're a PhD student at Uppsala University in cultural geography. Charlotte Ponzelar, you're also a PhD student, and that's at the Department of Education. But you also worked with the course Reimagining Education, but also Perspectives on Climate Change here at CEMUS. And Eva Livmar, currently working at CEMUS as Educational Coordinator, but you also worked as a course coordinator with different courses at CEMUS, the Reimagining Education, Sustainable Development A course, and other courses as well. And Aster Tommasini, you're now currently working with the Global Economy course and the Sustainable Economic Futures course, and you're also currently involved as a staff representative. So that's everybody, and you'll get to introduce yourself a bit more with the first startup question that I have that we always start these things off with. And it's basically how in life you got involved with these issues, what kind of led you to be engaged in this, and it doesn't have to be like one major triggering event, but something led you down the path to getting involved and passionate about these issues, whether it's in education, sustainability, or other things. Should we start with you, Eva? You look the calmest of all of us, so we'll start there.
Sure, we can start with me. I guess it started with me going traveling. I was working as a teacher at the time, and I had taken some time off and I went traveling. And I went down to Borneo and did some diving and realized that there was a lot of problems around the world in terms of palm oil plantations within the waters. There was a lot of things that I reacted on that I, didn't realize until going traveling, that there were so many things that wasn't right with the world in terms of climate change. And that's how I kind of got started with it. And then for me, it was having kids that was sort of the main breakthrough in terms of getting more anxious about what to do and how to get engaged. So that was sort of the wake-up call for me to have my own children and seeing sort of, okay, what is the legacy that we are leaving behind? What is it that we are doing to the world? And being a teacher, I got involved in CEMUS, or I thought that, more studies is always a good thing, I thought. And I started studying at CEMUS. And after doing the A course in sustainable development, I applied to become a course coordinator to see sort of the other side of student-led education. So that's how I got involved with CEMUS.
Great. Sachi, do you want to continue?
That was a great story. It's kind of hard to continue. I was trying to think back. It's a question that I don't get asked so often. But I think I often think about when I look at Greta or the kids that are on climate strike, because I think I started getting interested in environmental questions really early. I think I was around 10 or 11 or maybe 12. and like coming from Japan, this is kind of a typical thing to say, but like it was actually a manga, like an educational manga that got me into it. That was really like, how to say, problematizing and really kind of alarmist, like, oh my God, like things are going to go bad. And so I got really into it then, and I had really supportive parents that when I wanted to do projects, we did it together. And then, yeah, and then just jumping through, like, I guess, during senior high school, I tried to get engaged with some like environmental extracurricular stuff. Going into university, I studied, it was a Department of Agricultural Sciences, but I tried to get into studying a little bit more about, especially questions about deforestation, but also got into questions of agriculture. And then just jumping through some of the details, but yeah, I ended up in Sweden because I wanted to do a master's in Europe. And I thought, you know, sustainability questions, it should be Sweden or Germany. It's like my kind of general impressions of Europe were quite shallow. So had to go with like first impressions. And I'm very happy that I ended up in Sweden. So I did the master's in sustainable development that's connected to CEMUS. And it was actually one of the main reasons that I chose this program as a first choice was CEMUS, because I was really interested in education. And I could see from the website that there was a lot going on, like activities, events, a lot of student activities too. So I thought, okay, if all goes bad and I don't like the program, I'll still have CEMUS as like this like life connected to it, and I would still be able to see if this model works or not, because I was also really interested in the education model. So yeah, that's how I got into it.
All right, Aster, do you want to build on that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that I can relate to what Sachi said. For me, I've been very lucky, I would say, and privileged in the educational experiences I've had throughout my life, and especially during my bachelor, I got really involved with question of climate politics, and specifically thanks to kind of the organization and the professor we had at my school. I was able to go to Paris in 2015, the climate change conference, and then the following year at Marrakesh, so COP 21st and 22nd, I believe. And this was a little bit before climate change was really popular, like before, as we say, Greta. So it was, especially the second one was around the time of the Trump election. So a lot of, I would say, political and just world turmoil in terms of just everything. So being in that space was a very kind of life turning point for me, because I've always thought that I wanted to, focus on policy and have that approach to question of sustainability. But I really struggled to see, hope, especially in Paris, which celebrated what we were very, very far from any sort of climate justice approach to the issue. So I kind of turned to education in that way as kind of my entry point for how I engage or how I see sustainability issues. And after my bachelor, just as you said, I kind of was attracted to Uppsala and to Sweden because of CEMUS, because this aspect of learning with a community, student-led education, was something that I had been lucky enough to experience before, and I wanted to continue that sort of education. So yeah, that's how I got involved with I would say with sustainability, with education, and with CEMUS as an organization.
All right, Charlie.
I think it's a really hard question, because it's not like there was this one incident that made you walk a path, right? But I think it started during my undergrad when I was studying media and communication management at a business school, and I kind of just didn't like it. I just didn't like what I learned, and I was just questioning everything. And then after I graduated, I started working in the music industry, and there I couldn't get out of bed. Like it wasn't anything that I felt like contributed to what I believed in. And then, yeah, and then I wanted to do a master's afterwards. So I searched for a master's program in environmental communication because I still wanted to keep the communication part of my education alive. And then I found the environmental communication master at SLU here in Uppsala. So I started that. And then I got engaged with friends I made, with the people I met. I joined the fossil-free meetings, and that was in the CEMUS library. And that's how I learned about CEMUS, actually. Yeah, and then there was this opening of the Reimagining education course, and I thought, I'm going to apply. Yeah, and here I am today.
All right, and the reason also that I invited all of you, maybe we should explain that, or I should explain that, is the article that you have co-authored together, and together with some of the students in this course, Reimagining Education. And the article, we'll put this in the notes of the episode as well, but it's called Student-Led Education for a Better World, Reflections and Conversations. So you had a project ongoing with the students in and after the course, reflecting on their learning and everything. We'll get into the details more if you want to. But I want to touch back also and try to then summarize parts of the article at least, and maybe briefly, because we'll get into the details, the kind of takeaway or key message, or the most like interesting part of all of this in the article you've written as well. Maybe we can start with Sachi. You're first on the author list here. What's the kind of motivation, but also the key takeaway in the article that you want to highlight?
Let's see. I think so. So we write this also in the article, but the way it started was that Eva and Charlie, who were the coordinator for this course, invited me to join the course as a guest lecturer on CEMUS education. And so the context was that I had just finished working at CEMUS and started my PhD. And Evan and I discussed like, okay, maybe it's like a great time, like an opportunity for me to reflect on my experience at CEMUS. And then just the way we, I guess, organize things at CEMUS, we obviously wanted to make it interactive. And so we had this element of, I can't remember exactly how we organized it, but we had this element of students attending the course to like share their reflections about the CEMUS education so far. And so as we had that moment in class, it was so rich. I think it's also because, as we say also in the paper, this course has been about like education. And so even though most other courses at CEMUS also have this element of reflecting about the education, this course specifically, like the whole course was thinking about it. So I thought that also helped, and like just the reflections were so rich from the students. And that was the immediate kind of inspiration. I came out of the course thinking, wow, this is like really interesting. And I wrote to Charlie and Eva right away saying like, could this be something that we try to do something together with the students? And then Eva and Charlie like sent out this invitation to the students to like get involved in this project. And so it was very much like, how do you say, an experiment, and we were interested in the process. And so then what came out of it, it was quite a long process. But then I think, and it would be interesting to hear what the others think about this, because this is kind of meta, because we're reflecting on our reflection here. One of the key questions I wanted to bring forward was, I think, Aster's point in the conversation, that that, okay, which students get to lead CEMUS education? So it's this critical reflection about the CEMUS model that we talk about CEMUS being student-led education, and we all really value our experiences at CEMUS. We think it's a valuable place, and with this motivation to keep this critical reflection and trying to make it even better, we were thinking, okay, well, there was a lot of good stuff in this small course, Reimagining Education, and then how does this really, is it a representative case of CEMUS education, or was there something unique in this small 10 student course? And so these were some of the questions that we were dealing with that we wanted to share with people outside of just a small group.
Yep. Eva and Charlie, you coordinated the course from your perspective, and both connecting to the kind of key takeaways from the article, but also around the course and the process and building on what Sachi said. Maybe we can start with you, Eva.
Right. I think what Sachi brought up was very much true, that we initially, when we started thinking about the course, or sort of building up the course, the course was new to CEMUS. It hadn't run before we started it, or Charlie and I started it. So we were very much free to sort of develop what we wanted to be within the course. And I think, and Charlie, you may correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but I think we both were very keen on exploring the student perspective, sort of what is the student perspective on learning and on education, and what is the reimagining of education, how can that be done, not only sort of what happens around the world in different institutions and in different sort of pedagogical styles and didactics, but more sort of on a personal reflection, or in the personal reflection from a student perspective. And I think while trying to sort of come up with great sessions and something that was in line with the course goals, and building on the different themes that we created, when Sachi came in and reflected on CEMUS and CEMUS education, where the course took place, this whole sort of meta reflection of what is it that we're doing, who is the student that gets to run the CEMUS courses, or who is the student in student-led education, and what are the reasons. And that sort of went on to further realizations, but also discussions on sort of the organization of CEMUS, but also sort of what is this, as such you said, something very specific to the Redo course, or the one iteration that we did, or is this something that is common within the other courses, even though the settings or the course calls are different for the other CEMUS courses. So I think that was some of the thoughts that we sort of went into, and we had long conversations both in class and outside of class in terms of this. And please, Charlie, what's your thought?
Yeah, I don't have much more to add, actually, and agree with everything you said. I was just wondering, or I was thinking that the course about reimagining education and what we created, that together, like with the students, that was the main part, right? The main focus. I feel like we had this space to explore it, right? So I wonder, other courses could have done similar things. So I think it's not really content related, because it was about kind of what we played with, what was not really the content, but the way we spoke about it, we explored it, we engaged with it. And I think I just really, really appreciate this experience, because I've learned so much. And it's only because we had the time and space to be creative. And that's just something that I realized a lot later, that was, yeah, that's just really valuable, I think. So I think that's the only thing I wanted to add here.
Yeah.
This idea of like just giving oneself the time to create something maybe crazy. I don't know. Yeah.
I have to follow up on that as well, because when I listened and read the article, I was curious about the process in the planning process, because, and you write about this in the article as well, the class size, the number of students taking the class or being active in class and showing up for sessions, is a key factor that a smaller course like this with 10 students compared to a bigger course with 50 or 60 students, of course, becomes different. And also each CEMUS course is its kind of world or community in itself, it's very different from different CEMUS courses. But did you, Eva or Charlie, did you have any idea about, when you were planning the course, the number of students that would come? Because you could have had 50 or 60 students, and then would the setup and the kind of framing of the course, or how you plan different sessions, would that have worked as well? Of course, it would have worked, but it would have worked as well. Maybe that is the question. And did you have an idea about this as well?
I think we knew that it's not going to be a super big course because it was a new course. And then at some point, I don't really remember when we knew that it was around, I think in the beginning we said something around 10 to 20 people or something. In the end, we ended up with 10. But I mean, I'm speaking right now with what I know today, right? So I don't know I don't remember what I was thinking at that time. But today I'm thinking the only thing that if we had 50 people, I think our role, like Eva and my role, and also the students among each other, that would have changed. So it would have been not, let's say Eva and I, we were mostly facilitating a lot, like the ones facilitating. And then I think in a bigger group than with 50 people, then maybe it would have been a couple of students facilitating each other. So it's a little bit this whole idea of responsibility and sharing responsibility then, I guess, which comes important the bigger the community gets. Yeah.
Yeah. Aster, you took the course as a student back then. From your perspective and connecting to the article as well, if there's any key takeaway or something we haven't highlighted so far in this kind of introducing the article that you want to include in this conversation.
I think Sachi did a very good job in kind of highlighting what kind of my questions coming in the article project was, which is kind of where is the power and where is the like authority in the student-led education, and is that really kind of a process that involves everybody that is engaged in education, or the CCs, even though they are students, are still kind of in an authoritative position, and yeah, kind of what are then the implications of that, and can that be a little bit changed maybe? But I think for me as a student, I think just connecting to what I think Sachi and Eva were saying about the course, I think what was really key in the course and what I took away, both demanding of the other courses to do the same, and also then as a course coordinator myself, trying to do that in my role, is kind of this reflection of how are we learning, because I felt that in general, other CEMUS courses I took, and I think I was trying to bingo them all, we go straight in, we jump into sustainability, and we can be critical, but we don't take a step back, and we don't actually look and reflect on the educational process. And I do believe that it's kind of a central point of actually then the outcome of the course and the outcome of the learning process. So then I think Rita really kind of changed my game there by a lot, like helping me find these questions and then kind of processes on how to have this conversation, and I try to do that now in my role as course coordinator. Yeah, I would say that was one of the main things for me.
Yep. And one of the things also in trying to figure out the kind of special, or I don't want to use the word unique, but maybe we can do that. The unique role of a course coordinator, or 2 course coordinators per course as the model is structured. Because if you have a teacher, they've also been a student taking courses and studied at the university, so they also have that kind of student experience. So I'm thinking also here, it can't really be a general kind of thing. You were a student and then you kind of build on those experiences as a student and you become a course coordinator. I mean, there's no real difference there. So there has to be something else. And I think as CEMUS started and how Niklas Hellström and others have framed it is that you find something around the education or the courses that you're taking, you feel a lack of something in the education, basically. What you're studying there's something lacking, basically. So what would you say, and maybe we can start with you, Charlie, this time. What in the experience as a student, what kind of things do you feel you could build on in your work as a course coordinator? And it could either be that you took courses that were really bad, but it could be also things that were inspirational, of course, in other courses, because it has to be something there that kind of makes the course coordinator, or because the course coordinator, and you read about this as well, is an expert but not an expert in a sense. So it is very much experience based. Charlie, you want to start?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think what I'm trying, because I mean, even though I left CEMUS, I continue engaging with students, right, in my role as a PhD candidate. And I think actually what I was thinking when I studied myself, and I was in those learn processes, and I felt so much stress always. And then reflecting on the stress, like, where is it coming from? It's not like my parents are behind me with a whip or something, or anyone really, right? So it's like you make yourself this stress, but at the same time you're thinking about, well, that's what I did. So my experience was that I was thinking of the expectations. I was always thinking about, like, what are the expectations? What do they want me to write now? Instead of just sitting down, closing my eyes and thinking of, what do I want to write? What am I interested in? And I think maybe that was moments where I then, also after my master's, I took another course in Stockholm, and I kind of applied it, this idea of, like, this is just for me now, this education. Like, I want to go through this course and I want to have learned something that I want to learn, and I want to practice my writing in an assignment without thinking or having to think about what they expect. And that's easier said than done, because in Stockholm, in the course, I could do it because I didn't care about the credits. I didn't even, I didn't even finish the course, as in getting the credits or whatever. Like, I did all the assignments, but I didn't finish it to the end. So I didn't really care in that sense about the paper. And that was a nice experience. And I'm thinking many times back on this, like, how to take away this pressure from the students that they get away if they do as I did, or I'm doing right now still in my PhD, thinking about, what do people expect from me? What do people expect me to say? Instead of just going inwards and thinking, what do I want to learn right now? And I think that's maybe something worth reflecting on.
Yeah, Sachi, could you also connect to that, but also the things in your experience that was things to build on, or things of your own studies that kind of shaped you in the role as a course coordinator? Then, of course, you work your first course as a course coordinator, and then you continue working for several semesters, perhaps, and then you have those experiences, of course, to build on. But it has to be something in the experience of courses and education that leads you at the first stage to apply it to work at CEMUS, but also then in how you choose to structure a certain session, or what you feel is meaningful and central in examination, or the books you pick with others for the course literature in a course.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was just thinking a lot about what Charlie was saying now. this expectations and then thinking about what I want to learn. I think I definitely came into CEMUS with a lot of ideas and energy, and always the feedback that we would always get from either the work group or anyone else is that we're putting in too much into the course for 7.5 credit course. And yeah, I'm just trying to think back about like, what was it that I was bringing there, and it's just I'm not even sure anymore. Like, it was just so much ideas, and I would still, like, even today have so much ideas of what would be so cool to do with students. And the thing is, like, going back to I think what Charlie said earlier about this, you know, time and space to explore something together and then create something maybe even crazy. And I think that's the thing that maybe is unique about the CEMUS environment. So as a PhD student, we also have the opportunity in some places obligations to teach. And but it's very different, I think, at least in the way I have experienced it so far. And I think it has to do with the support structures. There's something about the CEMUS environment that encourages experimentation and do things with, you know, not just like throwing in random things, but like with thought. There's a lot of thought going into it, and sometimes evidence and a lot of pre-research. But there is some sort of setup that is allowing to do something that hasn't been tested yet in the course. And there's a lot of support around that. And I think maybe outside of the CEMUS setup, elsewhere in the university, maybe there's just this lack of support, and you also don't have so much time. So maybe that's what's different. But there's also maybe, there's a lot of these key things that when you change one thing, that feels like you would change something else. And that some of these things are like, if you change examination. So if you have this kind of written exam at the end, there's certain things that changes in the whole course, because the orientation of students would change, because you have to, at the end of the course, be able to give answers that that is right, you know, that it can be marked as correct, whereas that's not really what we're looking for at CEMUS, even though you have other examinations that is graded. So I don't know, I'm just trying to think about what it was that I was bringing that maybe was, perhaps I was coming more from like inspiration. If we think about like, if I was driven by lack or inspiration, and I was perhaps bringing in inspirations from my experience of studying at a liberal arts college in the US as an exchange student, also from what in Japan I experienced is like development education, I think it's called, like these kind of very experiential like role plays, or other experiential learning types that I was very influenced during my senior high school. And I guess having that experience of how transformative that was for me, perhaps I was trying to bring some of that in.
Yeah, and maybe this is a thing we've come back to before in discussions, but maybe then the uniqueness around CEMUS and the educational model is that there is a time and space, there's an opening in space basically where you can try out different things, but also have enough time to work with another person, because that's also a key aspect, that you are two people with different experiences and backgrounds and different ideas of what would be relevant in a course. Eva, do you want to connect to all of this and the experiences that led you to shape a course like you write about in the article?
Yeah, sure. For me, I think this time and space aspect is really important, that we were given. I mean, I think it's a privilege to be given the opportunity to be creative and have the opportunity to create a course such as Redo or any of the other CEMUS courses for that matter. So for me, that was really something that I felt positive about, because I was going from something that I felt was lacking from the Swedish educational system. I felt that there was so many things when I was working as a teacher that I just felt was wrong and that I didn't like. And I think for me, it was a search to get into something that felt meaningful. And at CEMUS, I was given this opportunity that I felt was one of the great opportunities, because what was lacking, or what I see as lacking within the educational system, both I think within higher education, but also on sort of lower levels, is the lack of transdisciplinarity. Within academia, I see that we have, even though the aspirations in many universities and institutions is to be transdisciplinary and to have this approach, it's still very hard, because the tradition within academia is to be very specific about things. Is how you do research is to be within sort of your field, and you use specific methods within your field, etc. And I think for me, this is something that CEMUS does very well, is to connect different disciplines with the guest lectures that we are inviting from different places, with course coordinators that are recruited, that come from different backgrounds, usually with sort of different kinds of studies, as bachelors, for instance, etc. And that's one way of ensuring that we have sort of multiple views on what approaches are applicable for different kinds of education and different kinds of academic fields, but also in tackling and having conversations about, okay, but these questions that we are engaging in are much larger, and they transgress these boundaries. They go over the different fields within academia, and therefore we need to ask the broader questions. And how do we then research them? How do we educate for them? How do we educate for a future that, you know, for at least quite a lot of people working with climate change seems to be quite grim. And how do we educate for that? How do we, what are the futures we see? So I think what we do at CEMUS and what was specific about this course is that we looked at different scenarios of sort of what is it that we see as lacking, but also what are the things that we are hoping for, sort of. And then, as Charlotte said, instead of maybe thinking about, okay, what is it that is expected of me, or what is it that I quote unquote should be doing in terms of what we think society wants, and instead look inwards and say, okay, but what is it that I believe, and what is it that I think I need? What is it that I think would be beneficial for whatever future I see? So I think that's one of the, or at least that's my take on sort of how I came into this, and from a lack of things.
Yep, and I want to make a version of this to you, Aster, on one of the questions. I don't know if maybe no article answers all their questions, but who are the experts, and connecting also to the experience that you have before you start working with a course, because you worked with the global economy course and the sustainable economic futures, and in the employment or recruitment process, we're not looking for economic experts or experts on economic futures, and that goes for every course coordinator employed. You're not employed because of your CV and your expert knowledge in all of the different issues a certain course touches upon. But how, if you want to connect to the global economy courses, or if you want to connect back to the Reimagining education, but that is also because in those economy courses, you would have economy students and there are majors in economy. So there's a certain dynamic there that is a bit clearer perhaps than in other CEMUS courses.
Yes, I think it's been definitely a different experience to go from a course as Reimagining education to then coordinating courses as the global economy and sustainable economic future, which, as you said, sometimes have students that don't even know what they're getting themselves into by joining a CEMUS course. And to some extent, from a purely who is the economic expert, is more likely that they are more expert than the person who's facilitating the course. But I think kind of trying to connect all of the dots and all of the thoughts I had while others were speaking. I think for me, the main thing is kind of how would we go about the practice of education. And what I mean by that is that, and this is something that comes in the paper, which is, oh, okay, we were 10 people and we were doing a meta reflection on education throughout the course, and hence that's why we were able to do something so special. But one of the conclusions is that it's not just because it was like, it doesn't have to be that it's only 10 people and that there is like a intent meta reflection as the main goal of the course, but that other disciplines and other courses can actually engage with the same kind of educational practice. And I think in a way for the global economy, we've tried to, and also for sustainable economic futures, we've been trying to do that as well, which is like, okay, are we reflecting on how we learn economics? So it's not just, okay, we're kind of horse racing into down like neoclassical economics. We're gonna look and like, how can we open up our worldviews and our way of approaching economics and also the way we learn it, as well as there was a lot of experiential learning. There was a lot of kind of students making things in reimagining education rather than just listening to somebody telling them how things should be. And as much as possible, we've tried to recreate that also in the global economy and sustainable economic futures. Of course, some courses lend themselves more, but there's always a potential to take the syllabus, to take the course material and see, okay, how can we actually break the norm and how can we do it in a way that makes the students kind of engage and get their hands dirty with the topic rather than just listening to somebody giving a PowerPoint. I don't know if that answered, because I had so many ideas when people were talking, so now I was trying to just thread everything together. Because at the end, I think the important thing is that the student leaves the course like feeling that they have actually done something and gotten themselves into the topic, and not just kind of, I was gonna get metaphorical, like they're not just sitting in a river and the water streams through, they're actually swimming together with the river. I don't know what I did there.
Yeah, there is a cooking food metaphor in the article, and I consciously want to avoid
exactly
myself, because then I get too intense around that, since I like cooking. But maybe we can come back to the cooking metaphor. We can maybe allow ourselves to do that. But I think also if the CEMUS educational model, and that's kind of big, but opens up a space for two people to be creative and plan and maybe be crazy in a good way around planning a course, maybe then also the actual course is a space that is opened up, a creative space, a partly crazy space for students as well, at least the ones that have the time and feel like they can engage fully, because also the examination in especially the final examination, I think still in a lot of courses has that kind of openness. It's less of a factual, you ask 10 fact questions and you look up in your books, or you write an exam in a big room. So that is also different in that sense as well. There's many things I want to ask about, but I have to get to this question because you come back to Freire and you come back to Kumashiro and also others that has this kind of power analysis around power in the classroom or relationships around power, but also touching about back to class and different students having different backgrounds and different interests and different experiences before coming into the different courses, whether at CEMUS or somewhere else. Because you could be critical around the way that we at CEMUS do courses, and that how then does walking in the woods or doing a clay workshop or a writing exercise or intense discussions in class, how does that actually then equip the students with the knowledge and agency to kind of change the world? Because we like this format and it feels really good, and the students that are there at least engage intensely, at least in this course that you brought up in the article. So I'm thinking also, are there other things we could do? And is this a valid critique that we get too caught up in form and lose kind of sight of the bigger goal of equipping students for this world that we live in? Should we start with you, Charlie?
We can try.
Try. It's a big question.
It's a really big question. I think also, I mean, it's a big question, this idea of that everyone is coming from different backgrounds. So it's like, what do they actually have in common, right? But they have in common that they're coming to this classroom. So then one starting point would be to identify why did they come to this course? And kind of like find similarities between them. And then you asked about the form, if we are getting too hung up on the clay workshop, for example. Yeah. And I was actually thinking right now, in the short time of reflecting on this question, this idea of facts, and then the facts that we want to learn, and then more like we want to learn something that we can say we know about something, if that makes sense. Like I can learn by heart, or I actually can't because I'm really bad at learning by heart, but some people can learn by heart any years that the big rulers in the world had, I don't know, some, you know what I'm saying, like they can learn those numbers, which I can't. But then it's about when we're coming at CEMUS, I kind of feel like, or in any classroom actually, maybe we could learn something so much bigger than stupid numbers. Like we could learn to live together in peace, to work together in peace, to work together in conflict, to develop our ways of arguing for something. Like this whole idea of like the subject and the way we introduce the subject or teach subject, I think, yeah, I mean, it must be go hand in hand. I'm going to start rambling because I'm just thinking of from the top of my head, but that's what I was thinking right now, that sometimes the way we live and we teach and we learn is bigger than the subject. But maybe we should cut this out of the podcast afterwards. I don't know.
No, this is good. We leave this, and that's why it's a podcast as well, and it's not an expert panel on how exactly we should do education. Sachi, do you want to come into this?
Yeah, no, I think, Charlie, you made a lot of good points, and I was thinking about I was thinking along quite similar lines about how one of the things that I gained in my own personal education experience, a lot of the things that stuck with me is from courses where I developed friendships, or I have, even if it didn't kind of come out as like lasting friendships, I had some sort of interpersonal relationships with either the teacher or my classmates. And I think I don't know. I do think these are kind of the things that I want to kind of build on what Charlie was saying, that it's so easy to get caught into what could be like facts as knowledge, or not just facts, but something that is quite more measurable or tangible as skills and competences. And I do get frustrated a lot when I'm just thinking about myself, thinking about what can I offer to like contribute to sustainability or whatever. And they're very non-tangible. They're very fluffy. It's like, I'm really good at like working with people, for example. It's like, you can make it sound more tangible, but it is something that's for once not really measurable. It's often not, it could also be, some of these skills could also be not really measurable in like an academic essay. So there's all these like soft skills or like fluffy, like fluffy seeming competences that's you actually need. And I think sustainability, like the thing that I said, like working well with other people. And you could put names on this to sound it less fluffy. But these are some of the things that I think CEMUS education with these kind of creative forms are developing, but it is because it's not really tangible, it's really hard to grasp what's going on, I think. And this is where I think it's tricky, because I definitely come from a position that you still need to, the students need to be on board. So either it being very intentionally communicated that the goal is, or like the point of this exercise is unclear, or like it's open-ended to begin with, or like you need to communicate what the point of it is to get some other students on board. But I think they need to be on board in order to go through some of these things like the clay workshop, because I think it's not just us that's in this struggle of figuring out what these like skills are that we want to get, but the students are also coming from this traditional education paradigm often. So they might not see the point of going into some of these things. Yeah, I don't know, they're very unfinished thoughts right now, but I think, you know, it goes into the very big question of what is education for? And that was one of the things that I think we're kind of tackling in this paper, is like sustainability requires like a different kind of education, but also sustainability in itself is not kind of the ultimate goal. I think this is kind of what we're trying to like dealing with, this tension. Like if sustainability was the ultimate goal, then we wouldn't be I don't know, like ecological sustainability, let's say. If ecological sustainability was the ultimate goal, then we wouldn't be caring so much about humans, I guess, for example. But so that's not really the ultimate goal. And I think then what is it is like a bigger question. I think that is quite hard to answer. And I think one of the things that we're saying is, I guess it's some sort of like, we want to live well. It's still quite fluffy, but this is kind of, I think, what we're sort of exploring in the paper. Maybe, I don't know, you guys can disagree with me.
Yeah, and how we kind of frame and understand sustainability, of course, then changes very much how education or the purpose of education. But Aster, come into this also, and if you can tie back to the question or the conversation that we had.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely a question that has been on my mind, both as a student and as a course coordinator, knowing that people learn very differently and knowing that there are different needs to be kind of tackled in the classroom. But I think linking to Sachi's point in Charlie's, but also what I was trying to say earlier about kind of the practice and then what actually happens in the classroom. Like I think that CEMUS courses do equip students with more than just which would be also good as in itself, kind of this more soft skills that Sachi was talking about. But I think there is some core methodologies that we hope students take away, whether it's critical thinking, system thinking, design thinking. And I think what the difference is, and what I think we do well and we should do more is the participative aspect of it. And again, that it's not just something that we look from the outside in, but it's something that students get to get their hands dirty with. So I think that is something that I don't think can be argued that it's not needed. Like if anybody is interested in sustainability, those are some of the skills that you want to have in your toolbox. And I mean, at least from the perspective of the courses I've taken as a student and also the ones I've coordinated, we want the students to live with these tools, to engage with this question of sustainability and economics and futures. And so they don't only just look at how these skills are from afar, as I said, they actually need to work with them. So I think that's the key.
All right, Eva.
Yes, thank you. I think one of the things that we did, or that Charlie and I talked about when we were planning for the reader course, at least, and to answer the question whether or not sort of we are leaving things out that we maybe should have done instead of having a walk in the forest and a clay workshop, etc. Of course, that's the plain and simple answer. Of course, there are things that are left out, but I think how we started this was to say, well, who are the students that are coming into this class? We know that they have at least 12 plus years of experience of schooling or education. So an assumption on our part, I would say, is that they have expectations of what it is to go into a university course. So we wanted to challenge that. What is the unexpected? The unexpected is for a class, go out into the forest and talk to each other about sort of what you see on the way, the little things in the forest, and then write something about it. The unexpected is to go into a clay workshop where you get your hands dirty. And the unexpected is to be given the responsibility of coordinating a debate together without sort of a teacher telling you, okay, how are you going to do it? How are you going to get the word out and get the right people, etc., etc. So I think that was some of the ideas of how do we challenge the expected with the unexpected. And also another sort of to touch upon what Charlie says, sort of what are the reasons that they are taking this course. Of course, we can't make an assumption on sort of what any personal reason is, but we can talk about them. We can talk about sort of why they're there, and then go into what are the right tools to tie in with what Sachiko was saying about sort of the skills that you develop during education. What are the skills that are needed? What kind of knowledge is needed? And at least from my part, I see it as that is a definition that sort of comes from within. What is the tools that I need to develop whoever I am and whoever I want to be in the future? It kind of ties back to all my knowledge or all my previous expectations and experiences. And I think what we're trying to do in CEMUS in general, but in Redo in specific, I think, is to give time and a space for the students to kind of dive into that question on how can I find the tools that I need? How can I develop a different view, an unexpected view of what might be needed for the future, and in relation, of course, to the larger questions of climate change, of sustainability, of all the sort of questions that we are dealing with. And please, Charlotte, jump in.
Yeah, I was just now thinking that I want to say that I agree so much with all your sentiments, and also this thinking of like, who am I, right? It's like coming back to what we said before about this, like letting go of expectations. Who am I? Who do I want to be? And yeah, I wanted to say something more, I forgot now. Oh yeah, exactly. I wanted to say that what I was blabbling on before about, and now I found the words, was that you're kind of in this question between like subject and how do you want to convey the subject. It's a little bit this like making the student find their interest and care about it, right? And by that, they need to learn who they are. So that's what I kept thinking of right now. Yeah. And just this like interest for something, and that you do by how do you present it.
We're almost at the end, and I think that's also very, I mean, it ties into what I think we all share here, and hopefully people working at CEMUS as well, in that the courses can be a space where you can kind of develop and maybe find your passions, but also grow as a human being together with others, and also build some kind of community and friendships. And also be a space where you can try out different things that you normally would not try out. But we're at the end, and there's you ask this in the article, but basically I'll reframe this as a question. If you could change one thing about the CEMUS educational model, it could be adding something, taking away something, or maybe both. And then also for this season, at least, we asked also for one song that is playing in your head, or a song that you come back to in life as a central theme. And that doesn't have to be the grandest or the less shameful song. It could be anything. And I can see all of you moving in your chairs around this as well. But I think we can, let's start with you, Eva. Since you now also work at CEMUS, let's start in that order. And also if you have a song.
I guess Gnarls Barkley with Crazy is a song. I think if I were to change something, I would take away grades.
Great, perfect. Aster?
I would, if I could, there's so much, but if I could do one thing, I would, make it possible for courses to have a smaller size. And we discuss why that's a challenge in the article. I was trying to have more time to go through Spotify. I have some, the Carola famous Swedish song. I've been singing a lot of Swedish stuff, anyways, doesn't matter. Swedish stuff.
Yeah, something with Carola, if I understood you correctly. Yeah, that's a good catalog with Melodifestivalen starting soon as well. Okay, Charlie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I think if I could add something to CEMUS, I would encourage more cooperation or collaboration between the different courses. Something like a theme week or something we've been talking about. I think that would be really fantastic. And songs, I really like at the moment Claude Debussy's, and I don't know the English title, and I can't pronounce the French one, but I'm going to try. Prélude à la presse midi d'une femme or something. Yeah, that's a great.
Thank you. Sachi, your last.
Okay, so song, now I was able to look through Spotify. Power to the People. So it feels like I have a playlist called Climate Strike, and I went through that one. I feel like this is a suitable theme for this conversation. One thing we do mention also this somewhere in the article. One thing I do sort of want to reintroduce to CEMUS courses is space for students taking the course to co-create. And I'm thinking specifically of something that we had when I was running the Global Challenges and Sustainable Futures course called the Student-Led Sessions. And so that was formatted that each week there is a group of students that facilitates the conversation. And they often did quite ambitious workshops for the other students taking the course. And I do feel like those kind of spaces are in line with the kind of things that we talked about today about the students taking the course, having the space to take on the leadership role of running the class. And, you know, it doesn't have to be in this sort of format where students can co-create the class or their own learning. I think a lot of the CEMUS courses already have the space for students to explore what they want to do, especially in their final project and so forth. But I do want to highlight that that could be something for current and future coordinators to consider.
All right. Thank you all so much. And we actually managed to do this 5 people conversation in a podcast format. Maybe that isn't so surprising because you could talk to 5 people in a room. Maybe we can manage this as well.